She'd been fishing the same strait for 11 years. She knew it the way she knew her own hands. The sound of the water before the weather changed, the particular green of the current shifting, the light that told her whether the day was worth going out. She thought she knew everything the sea was going to bring her. Then one morning it brought her a man with one coat and nowhere to go. And the next morning, without quite deciding to, she made 2 cups of tea instead of 1. The sea at Vethmark did not apologize for what it did to ships. This was understood by everyone who lived in the harbor town. The fishermen, the dock workers, the merchants who watched their cargo come and go with the specific anxiety of people who had learned to love something unreliable. The Vethmark Strait was fast and cold, and changed its mind about the weather with the casual cruelty of something that had no particular interest in human opinion. Ships came through it, from the south carrying spices and finished cloth and passengers with letters of introduction. Some of them arrived, some of them did not, and on the mornings after, Vethmark Harbor filled with what the sea had decided to return, which was never everything. Drev Keth had been fishing the strait for 11 years. She knew its moods the way she knew her own hands. The particular green of the water when the current shifted, the sound the wind made through the rigging when it was planning something, the way the light on the surface in the early morning told you whether the day would be worth the trouble of going out. She was out before dawn on the morning of the wreck because the light had told her the fish would be running east of the marker buoy, which they were. She had a half-full catch basket and the specific contentment of being right about something important when she saw the debris. Planks first, then rope, then the curve of a hull section floating low, then something that was not debris. She put the oar in and pulled hard toward it. The man was face down and not moving, which was the wrong way to be, and he was tangled in a piece of rigging, which was keeping him from going further down. Drev pulled him alongside the boat and got her hands under his arms and lifted, which required the full application of 11 years of hauling nets and her own considerable build, and got him over the gunwale and into the boat. He landed badly. She turned him over. He was breathing, just. She could see it in the slight movement of his chest and the water that came out of his mouth when she turned him on his side. She looked at him for a moment. Mid-30s, she estimated. Dark hair pasted to his face. A gash along his jaw from something. Dressed for travel, not for the sea. Wool coat, not oilskin, which explained several things. His hands were not a sailor's hands. No rope calluses, no particular roughness at the grip points. A passenger, then, not crew. She looked at the debris field. There was no ship. There were no other survivors visible. She turned the boat around and headed for harbor. Vethmark's harbor master was a small, efficient man named Corvel, who had been counting things in and out of the harbor for 20 years and had developed, over that time, the particular detachment of someone who had seen most outcomes and found them manageable. He looked at the man Drev carried off her boat with the expression of a man updating a ledger. "Storm wreck," he said. "Yes," Drev said. "No ship visible. Debris field east of the marker, half a mile. Anyone else? Not that I saw." Corvel made a note. "Name? Don't know yet. He'll need the healers." "I know," Drev said. "That's why I brought him here, and not to the fish market." Corvel looked at her over his ledger. He had known Drev for 11 years, and had long since learned to take the flat precision of her speech as information rather than hostility. "Right," he said. "I'll send someone." She handed the man to the healers, which required 2 of them, and a stretcher and some arrangement of his waterlogged wool coat. She went back to her boat. She had fish to finish delivering. She went to the healer's house that evening because she had found him, which meant she was listed in Corvel's ledger as the finder, which meant she would be asked about it anyway, and also because she had found him, which was a different kind of reason that she did not examine closely. He was awake, barely, but awake, propped on the healer's bed with the particular expression of someone who has recently had a very bad morning and is still in the middle of calculating the extent of it. He looked at her when she came in. "You pulled me out," he said. His voice was rough with salt water and not much else. He was making it a statement, not a question, which told her he had been thinking about it. "Yes," she said. There were others, he said, on the ship. I didn't find others, she said. The harbor master sent boats. He was quiet for a moment. She watched his face do the thing faces did when they were absorbing information they had been expecting and had hoped would be different. The Careth, he said, that was the ship. I'll tell Corvell. How many boats did they send? 6, she said. They'll search until dark. He looked at the ceiling. She stood in the healer's room and let him have the moment because she understood, in the way she understood the sea, that some things needed to be received before they could be responded to. After a while he said, Where am I? Vethmark, she said. Harbor town, south end of the strait. Which side of the border? Both, she said. Vethmark sits at the junction. Human quarter on the east side, Orc quarter on the west. The harbor is shared. He looked at her. She knew, difficult to mistake for human, and he was too aware for it to have escaped him. You're from the west quarter, he said. My boat is, she said. I live on the boat. He processed this. My name is Sander Vale, he said. Drev Keth, she said. What was your business on the Carath? Passage, he said. South. I had a letter of introduction to the trade consortium in Marin. The letter is gone now, she said. Yes, he said, the letter is gone. He looked at the ceiling. The consortium is also. He stopped. The consortium was the reason for going south. If the letter is gone, the consortium. He stopped again. The situation is changed. It is, she said. He looked at her. The expression of a man doing arithmetic on a situation that had altered significantly mid-calculation. I don't have anything, he said. It was stated flatly, the way she stated things, information being presented rather than a plea being made. The ship had everything, coin, letters, documents, clothes, everything. The healers have your coat, she said. It's drying. One coat, he said. Yes. One coat and nowhere to go, he said. Yes. He was quiet. She was quiet. Outside, the harbor made its harbor sounds, ropes, water, gulls, the distant sound of someone unloading something heavy. The boats, she said, they'll search until dark. Thank you, he said. It was said simply, without the performance of gratitude that made gratitude difficult to receive. Just the fact of it. She went back to the harbor. The boats found 2 more survivors from the Carath. Not many out of a ship's complement, but more than nothing, which was what the sea usually offered. The other 2 were crew, and they had people in Vethmark to go to, which was the difference between a bad morning and a worse one. Sander Vale had no one in Vethmark. This became apparent over the next 3 days, which Drev knew because Corvell mentioned it, and because she had gone back to the healer's house twice, which she told herself was because she was listed in the ledger and would be asked about it anyway. On the 3rd day, the healer said Sander could be moved. On the 3rd day, it also became apparent that move to where was a question without an immediate answer. The inn on the east side cost more than a man with 1 coat, and no coin could pay. The lodging on the west side was arranged through clan connections that Sander didn't have. The harbor charity house had 2 beds, and both were occupied. Drev stood at the dock and thought about the arithmetic of this. She thought about her boat, which was 32 feet, and had a small cabin forward that she used for sleeping and for storing things that needed to stay dry. The cabin had 1 bunk, a shelf, a lamp, and approximately enough space for 1 person to exist without constant renegotiation. She thought about the man she had pulled out of the sea with a wool coat and no letter of introduction and nowhere to go, and the flat, precise way he had stated his situation as information rather than a plea. She went back to the healer's house. The boat, she said. He looked at her. The cabin is small, she said. 1 bunk. You'd sleep on the deck in good weather, the cabin in bad. It's not comfortable. He was quiet for a moment. Are you offering? I'm describing the situation, she said. The situation is that you have nowhere to go, and I have a cabin. Those 2 facts are adjacent. He looked at her steadily. He had that quality, she had noticed, the steadiness. He didn't perform emotions or manage them visibly. He just looked at things and let what was true be true. What would I do, he said, on the boat? What can you do? I can read and write in 3 languages, he said. I can keep accounts. I can do basic carpentry. I'm not a sailor, but I can follow instructions. The nets need mending, she said. The accounts need keeping. I hate accounts. The pump sticks and needs to be worked by hand twice a day. I can do those things, he said. In exchange for the cabin and food, she said. Yes, he said. This is temporary, she said, until you have another arrangement. Understood, he said. She went back to the boat. He followed, carefully, because the healer had said to be careful for a week, and he appeared to take this literally. He looked at the boat the way he looked at everything, steadily, without judgment, taking in what was actually there. It's a good boat, he said. Yes, she said, it is. The first week was an arrangement of logistics. Drev left before dawn. Sander woke when she did, which surprised her, because most people did not wake before dawn without specific requirement. He made tea. She had not told him where the tea was or that she drank it, but he found it and made it, and left a cup at the tiller without comment, which was the correct thing to do, and she did not say so. He mended nets in the afternoons with the focused attention of someone learning something new and not pretending they already knew it. He made mistakes and corrected them and asked questions when he needed to and did not ask them when he didn't. The bilge pump he dealt with twice a day, exactly as agreed, with the reliable thoroughness of someone who had been told a thing needed doing and had decided it would be done. The accounts. She gave him 3 months of her record-keeping, which was organized but not in a system anyone else could use, and he sat with it for 2 days and asked her questions about it and then reorganized it into something that, he explained, she could maintain herself without him. She did not say anything about the without him. She filed it. On the 5th day, he came back from the harbor market with supplies, which she had not asked him to do. She looked at what he had bought. I didn't give you coin for this, she said. Corvel, he said. He needed someone to read a cargo manifest that was in the southern dialect. I can read the southern dialect. He paid you. Enough for this, Sanders said. I thought it was more useful as food than as coin given the current housing situation. She looked at the supplies. He had bought correctly. The things she used, not the things he might have preferred. How did you know what to get? I looked at what was on the boat, he said. She put the supplies away. She noted that he had also, without comment, repaired the hinge on the cabin door that had been stickle since spring, and which she had been meaning to fix and hadn't. The hinge, she said. It was sticking. He said yes. I found the tools in the stern locker, he said. I hope that was. It's fine, she said. Thank you. He nodded and went back to the nets. She stood at the tiller and looked at the harbor and thought about the hinge, which had been sticking since spring, and about the supplies bought with earned coin, and about a man who looked at what was on the boat before deciding what it needed. The second week, she took him out. Not to fish, she fished alone, had always fished alone, would not easily revise this. But there were supply runs to the outer islands, and an extra pair of hands on a loaded boat was useful. And he had said he could follow instructions. He could follow instructions. He was not a sailor, but he paid attention, and he did not panic when the weather changed, which it did on the second day out, shifting from manageable to requiring attention in the fast way the strait sometimes did. Hold that line, she said. He held it. Don't let it run. He didn't. When I say ease it slowly. Don't let it go. How will I know when slowly is too slow? I'll tell you, she said. Ease. He eased it. She watched. Good. Hold. He held. The weather did what it did, and they came through the other side of it and tied at the outer island dock with the particular satisfaction of a thing handled correctly. Sander coiled the line he had been holding and looked at the water. You knew it was coming, he said. Yes, she said, before it came. Yes. How? She thought about how to explain what was not, in her experience, explainable. The sound, she said. The water changes sound before it changes appearance, and the smell, and the way the boat sits. He was quiet for a moment. You feel it through the boat. Yes, that's. He stopped. How long did that take to learn? I grew up on this boat, she said. I don't know when I learned it. It was before I knew I was learning it. He looked at the hull planks, the deck, the tiller, with the expression of someone revising their understanding of an object. The boat is part of how you know things, he said. Yes, she said. He stopped again. He had a habit, she had noticed, of stopping before saying something he hadn't fully worked out yet. and not finishing the sentence until he had. She had begun to find this useful as a signal that something was worth waiting for. "That's the right way to know things," he said. "Not separate from the thing, part of it." She looked at the harbor. At the outer island dock, the boats tied at it, the particular quality of the light at this hour on water. "Yes," she said, "it is." By the end of the third week, Vethmark had formed opinions. This was inevitable. Vethmark was not a large town, and the harbor was the center of it, and the harbor saw everything and discussed most of it. Drev had lived there for 11 years and understood that being discussed was different from being affected by it, and had arranged her life accordingly. What Vethmark said, in the various versions that came back to her through the dock and the market, and Corval's habitual commentary, was, "The Keth woman pulled a human out of the water and kept him on the boat." This was accurate, as far as it went. What Vethmark implied beneath the accuracy was various things that Drev also heard and found less interesting than the fish. Sander heard them too. She could tell by the particular quality of his expression when he came back from the harbor market on a Wednesday, which was not his usual expression, which was attentive and even, but something more controlled. "People are talking," he said. "People talk," she said. "About us," he said. "About the situation," she said. Which is unusual enough to be interesting. He was quiet for a moment. "Does it bother you?" She considered this honestly. "No," she said. "Does it bother you?" He thought about it. "It would bother me," he said, "if it was causing you a problem." "It's not causing me a problem," she said. "Then no," he said. She went back to checking the rigging. "Drev," he said. She looked at him. "I've been here 3 weeks," he said. "The arrangement was temporary. I should." He stopped. "I should be trying to make a different arrangement." She looked at the rigging, then at the harbor, then at him. "Corval has more manifests," she said, in the southern dialect. He mentioned it. "I know," he said. "He asked me again yesterday." "That's work," she said. "Work means coin. Coin means options." "Yes," he said. "That's the arithmetic." "What's the remainder?" she said. He looked at her. It was the steady look, the one that took in what was actually there, rather than what was convenient. "I like the boat," he said. She looked at the water. "I like the sea," he said. "I didn't know that before. I had no reason to be on the sea before." He paused. "I like knowing where the wind is going before it goes there. He stopped. "I like learning something that takes a long time to learn." "You've been here 3 weeks, she said. "Yes," he said. "I have a long time to go." She looked at the boat, at the mended nets, the balanced accounts, the hinge on the cabin door that no longer stuck, at the cup of tea left at the tiller every morning before dawn. "The outer islands run again next week," she said. "2 hands are better than 1 in the strait." "Yes," he said. "The arrangement," she said, "has been functioning." "Yes," he said. "Functioning arrangements," she said, "don't generally need to be replaced." He was quiet for a moment. "Then is that an offer?" "It's a description of the situation," she said. "The situation is that the arrangement is functioning, and there's no particular reason to change it." "Drev," he said. "Sander," she said. "That's not what I'm asking," he said. She looked at the water, at the harbor, at the particular quality of the light on the strait in the late afternoon, which she had been looking at for 11 years. "No," she said, "it isn't." She did not say anything else. She went back to the rigging. He went back to the nets. The boat moved at its mooring with the easy patience of something that had been doing this for a long time. The answer arrived in pieces, the way answers did when they were real, rather than convenient. It arrived first in the mornings, which changed without announcement. She had always gone out before dawn alone, and she continued to go out before dawn alone. But she stopped going out without telling him when she would be back. Not because he asked, but because she noticed he was awake when she returned, and the noticing made the information relevant. It arrived in the evenings, when she sat at the stern and watched the harbor lights, and he brought 2 cups and sat at a distance. That was not the distance of a guest, though it was not yet the distance of something else, and they were quiet together in the way that was comfortable rather than empty. It arrived in the way she explained things. She was not, by nature, an explainer. She knew the sea and the boat and the fish, and she did these things without needing to account for them. but she found herself saying, "The wind comes from the northeast before the current shifts, and the current shifts before the fish move. And if you know the wind, you can know the fish." Not because he asked, because it seemed important that he know. He wrote it in the small notebook he had acquired from the harbor market on his second week, in the southern dialect, which she couldn't read, which she had not mentioned and he had not explained. "What are you writing?" she said one evening. "What you tell me," he said. "So I remember it correctly. About the sea, yes." He closed the notebook. "Also other things." "What other things?" He looked at the harbor. "The way you check the rigging before you check the catch. The way you pause at the tiller when the weather is thinking. The way you know where the boat is without looking at the horizon." She looked at him. "Those aren't facts about the sea." "No," he said. "They're facts about you." She looked at the water. "I record useful things," he said. "Things worth keeping a record of." She was quiet for a long time. The harbor made its sounds. A gull landed on the gunwale, looked at them with the frank assessment of a gull, and left. "Sander," she said. "Drev," he said. "The situation," she said. "Yes." "Has changed," she said. "Yes," he said. "I think it has." She looked at him. The steady look, the one she had come to understand over 6 weeks. Not passive, not waiting, just fully present with what was actually there. "I pulled you out of the sea," she said. "You did," he said. "Because you were in it, yes." "And you had nowhere to go," she said. "I had nowhere to go," he said. At the time, she filed this. "And now," she said, he looked at the boat, at the repaired hinge, at the accounts on the shelf, at the mended nets drying in the evening air, at the tiller, where a cup of tea appeared every morning before she was fully awake. "Now," he said, "I have specific reasons for being here." She looked at him. "Not no reason," he said. "Specific reasons." He held her gaze. "The boat is one, the sea is one." He paused. "The person who knows the sea the way she knows her own hands is one." Drev looked at the harbor lights on the water, orange and shifting. She thought about 11 years of this, the boat and the sea and the early mornings, the fish running east of the marker buoy, the particular satisfaction of being right about something important. She thought about a man she had pulled out of the water who had nowhere to go, who had looked at her boat and said it's a good boat the way she looked at everything, not flattering it, not managing it, just receiving what was actually there. She thought about the notebook. Facts about her, worth keeping a record of. "The outer islands," she said. "Yes." "The run next week, 2 people?" "Yes," he said. "And the week after," she said. "The northern route." "It's longer, a week, maybe more." She looked at the strait. "It's harder than the outer islands." "I know," he said. "You don't know yet," she said. "You'll know after." "Yes," he said. "That's how knowing works." She looked at him. The almost smile, which she had discovered she had, came and went in the corner of her mouth. It was not something she had been aware of before him. "The northern route," she said. "2 people handle it better than 1. "Yes," he said, "significantly better." "I understand," he said. "That's not what I'm saying," she said. He was quiet. "I'm saying," she said, "that the northern route is worth doing properly, and properly requires." She stopped. She was not, in general, someone who left sentences unfinished. She tried again. "The situation has changed," she said, "and I'd like to." She stopped again. The water moved, the harbor lights moved with it. "Drev," he said very quietly. She looked at him. "I've been writing down things worth keeping a record of," he said, "for 6 weeks. There's a great deal of it." He held her gaze. "I have not been writing down anything about leaving." She looked at the water for a long time. "The northern route," she said. "Next month, if the weather holds." "The weather will hold," he said. "You can't know that yet," she said. "No," he said, "but you can." She looked at the strait, at the water which was calm now, which was planning things, which she could read in the sound and the smell and the way the boat sat at its mooring. "The weather will hold," she said. "Good," he said. The harbor settled into its night. The lights on the water moved and reformed and moved again. Drev sat at the stern with her cup, and he sat at the distance that was not the distance of a guest. And they were quiet together in the way that had weight in it now, the weight of things that had been said and things that didn't need to be. The boat moved at its mooring, patient and capable, the way things were when they had found their correct purpose, and were doing it. The northern route took 8 days. On the first day, the weather changed twice, and he held the line both times without being told to get ready. On the third day, she showed him how to read the water for the current shift, and he was quiet for a long time and then said, "The sound drops a half tone and the surface goes flat. Is that right?" It was right. On the 5th day, he was at the tiller when a squall came through the eastern gap, which she had not predicted and he could not have predicted, and which required immediate and precise action. She was midship. She shouted one instruction. He did it correctly on the first attempt. When it was over and the boat was through, and the squall was behind them, doing its squall things to the eastern gap, Sanders sat at the tiller with the expression of a man receiving information about himself. That was. "You did it right," she said. "I know," he said. "I didn't know I would." "I did," she said. He looked at her. "You pay attention," she said. "People who pay attention do the right thing when it matters. They've already done it in their mind." He was quiet for a moment. "You trusted me with the tiller." "Yes," she said. "You don't give the tiller to people you don't trust," he said. "No," she said, "I don't." He looked at the tiller, at his hands on it, at the water ahead. "I've been writing things down," he said, "that are worth keeping a record of." "You mentioned that," she said. "There's more now," he said. "The squall. The way you said I did it right before I said anything." She looked at the water ahead. "Drev," he said, "the fish will be east of the marker buoy when we get back," she said. 2-3 days after the squall. "I know," he said. "You told me how to know that. You remembered correctly. I wrote it down." She looked at him. He looked at her. The boat moved through the water with the particular smoothness of a well-handled boat in open water, which was one of the better sounds she knew. "When we get back," she said. "Yes?" "Corvell has a cargo manifest that needs someone who can read the southern dialect and also tell him if the weights are correct." She paused. "The weights require knowing something about boats." "I know something about boats," he said. "You know something about one boat," she said, "which is enough for one cargo manifest." "Is this the arrangement?" he said. She looked at the water. "The arrangement is functioning," she said. "Drev," he said. "The arrangement has been functioning well," she said. "Drev," he said again, quietly. She looked at him. He was looking at her with the steady look, the one that took in what was actually there, the one she had come to understand over 2 months, was not patience exactly, but presence. Complete, unhurried, real. "The situation has changed significantly," she said, "from the beginning." "Yes," he said. "And the arrangement," she stopped, "is not just an arrangement anymore," he said. She looked at the water. "No," she said, "it isn't." "Good," he said. "Is that all you're going to say?" she said. "I've been writing things down," he said, "for 2 months, things worth keeping a record of. I could say many of them." "Say one," she said. He was quiet for a moment. The boat moved. The water moved. The particular sound of open water on a good day was all around them. "The morning the tea appeared," he said. "The first morning. I hadn't told you I drank tea. You found it and made it and left it at the tiller." He looked at the tiller. "I didn't say anything." "You didn't say anything. It was just there." He looked at her. "That's the one I go back to. That's the beginning for me of what this is." She looked at the tiller. "At the spot where the cups sat every morning. I make tea," she said. "Every morning, I know," he said. "You made it for yourself." And then there was a second cup. She was quiet. "There has been a second cup every morning since the first one," he said. "I've been counting." She looked at the water, at the strait, which she had known for 11 years, which she had learned to read before she knew she was learning it, at the boat, which was part of how she knew things, not separate from her, but part of her, at the man at the tiller who had been pulled out of the sea with nothing, and had looked at her boat and said, "It's a good boat," and had been writing things down ever since. "The second cup," she said. "Yes? It's not an accident," she said. He looked at her. The almost smile which he had, which appeared rarely and meant something when it did. "No," he said. "I didn't think it was." The boat moved through the northern water under an open sky, and Drev Keth sat at the bow and watched the strait that she knew with her whole body, and felt, for the first time in 11 years, that the boat was the right size for what it was carrying. They came back on the 8th day with the hold full and the accounts balanced, and a cargo manifest for Corvell that Sander had written in the southern dialect with the weights verified, which Corvell received with the expression of a man whose paperwork problem had found an efficient solution. "You're useful," Corvell told Sander in the tone of someone updating a ledger. "I try to be," Sander said. "The harbor could use someone who reads the southern dialect," Corvell said. "The trade ships come through more in spring. The manifests. I'll think about it," Sander said. He came back to the boat and told Drev about the conversation. She was checking the rigging, which was her habit after the northern run. Checking everything systematically from bow to stern. "What did you say?" she asked. "That I would think about it." She checked a line. "What are you thinking?" "That the harbor work would be from the dock," he said, "not from the boat." "Yes," she said, "and the boat goes out. Every day that's worth going out," she said, "which is most days." "So the harbor work and the boat work are different schedules," he said. "Yes," she said, "they are." He was quiet for a moment. She finished the rigging check and moved to the nets, which needed inspection after the northern run. "I could do both," he said. "Harbor work in the mornings," she said. "Boat work in the afternoons and on the runs." "The runs are longer," he said. "The runs pay differently," she said. "And the southern dialect is worth more to Corvell when there's a ship in harbor, which isn't every day." He looked at the dock, at the harbor, at the boat. "You've thought about this," he said. "Arithmetic," she said. "The boat needs 2 people on the northern run. Corvell needs someone who reads southern dialect. Those 2 facts don't contradict." "No," he said, "they don't." She checked the nets. He stood at the dock and looked at the boat. "Drev," he said. "Sander, I'm not going anywhere," he said. She looked up from the nets. "That's not what I meant," she said. "I wasn't." "I know," he said. But it seemed worth saying plainly. He held her gaze. "I pulled out of the sea by a stranger with nowhere to go. That was 2 months ago. The nowhere has changed. The reasons for being here have changed." He looked at the boat. "I'm not going anywhere." She looked at him, at the boat, at the dock under him, which was Vethmark's dock, which was the harbor that was both sides of the border, which was her harbor. "There's a storage locker on the west dock," she said. "Small, above the waterline. Corvell rents them." "Yes," he said. "It would be useful," she said, "for someone who needed a place to keep land things. Documents, clothes, that kind of thing." He looked at her. "I have 1 coat," he said. "You could have more than 1 coat," she said, "if you had a place to keep it." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "You're suggesting I rent the storage locker." "I'm noting that it exists and that it would be useful," she said. "What you do with the information is your decision." "Drev," he said. "Sander, is this you telling me to stay?" he said. She looked at the nets in her hands. She looked at the tiller, where a cup appeared every morning. She looked at the notebook he had set on the gunwale, which was filling with things worth keeping a record of. "Yes," she said. "That's what this is." He said nothing for a moment. The harbor was doing its harbor things around them. Ropes, water, gulls, the distant voices of dock workers. "All right," he said. "All right," she said. She went back to the nets. He went to find Corvell about the locker. Winter came to Vethmark the way winter came to harbor towns, with salt in it, and cold, and a particular quality of light on the water that was different from every other season. Drev had seen 11 winters in Vethmark. She knew them the way she knew the sea, not as something separate from her, but as part of the rhythm of things. The pattern she had been paying attention to long enough that it was body knowledge. This winter was different. Not the weather, which was the same as winters were. Not the fish, which moved as they always moved. Not the boat, which was as reliable as it had always been. What was different was that she came back in from the pre-dawn run, and there was tea at the tiller, and the accounts were updated and the bilge pump had been worked, and there was someone at the dock who looked up from what he was doing when she came in, which was a small thing, and not a small thing at all. She knew how to read the sea. She had learned it before she knew she was learning it, and now it was in her hands and her shoulders, and the way she sat at the tiller, as much a part of her as the boat itself. She was, she found, in the middle of learning something else. She did not know yet what she would call it when she knew it completely. She knew it was happening in the same way. Before she was fully aware of it, in the body rather than the mind, in the mornings and the evenings, and the particular silence of two people on a boat that is the right size for what it is carrying. "The weather tomorrow," Sanders said one evening. "What about it?" "The sound," he said. "The water." She listened. She felt the boat. "Northeast wind," she said. 2 hours before dawn. It'll pass before noon." He listened. "I hear it," he said. The half-tone drop. She looked at him. "You've been learning," she said. "You've been telling me," he said. "I've been writing it down." "What does it say?" she said. "In the notebook." He opened it. He found the page. He read, in the southern dialect, which she still couldn't read, but which she was beginning to understand, was its own kind of language for keeping things. "It says," he said, "the sea sounds different before the weather changes, and the difference is in the low register. And if you learn to hear it before you know you're hearing it, you know things before they happen." He closed the notebook. "And it says the person who taught me this has been doing it for 11 years and does it the way she does everything, completely without separation as part of herself." Drev looked at the water, at the harbor lights on it, orange and shifting in the evening. "That's not facts about the sea," she said. "No," he said, "it isn't." She was quiet. The boat moved. The harbor settled into its night. "Sander," she said. "Drev," he said. "The second cup," she said. Every morning, he said. "It was not an accident," she said. "No," he said, "it wasn't." "It was," she said, and stopped. She was not someone who left sentences unfinished. She tried again. "It was the first thing I knew," she said. "Before I knew anything else. The second cup." He looked at her steadily. "I know," he said. "You wrote it down," she said. "Yes," he said. "The beginning, for me. The first thing I wrote down that wasn't about the boat or the accounts or the tide tables." She looked at the harbor, at the lights on the water, which she had been looking at for 11 years, which looked different now in the way that things looked different when the thing you were looking at them with had changed. "The northern run," she said, "in spring, when the weather opens." "Yes," he said. "Two people handle it better than one," she said. "Significantly," he said. "Yes," she said. "Significantly." She looked at him. He looked at her. The steady look, the complete presence. The look that had been, for 2 months, the thing she came back to the dock to find. She reached out. She put her hand over his where it rested on the gunwale. Her hand, large and scarred from 11 years of rope and weather. His hand, which had been developing rope calluses since the 3rd week, and had the ink stain on the side of the middle finger that she had come to think of as his. Different hands, same gunwale. He turned his hand under hers, palm up, and she let her fingers close over it. Not claiming, not asking, choosing. The harbor was quiet around them. The boat moved at its mooring, with the patient knowledge of a thing that had been doing this for a long time, and intended to continue. Tomorrow there would be a northeast wind before dawn, and it would pass before noon, and they would both know it was coming before it came. And that was one of many things, and all of them together were the situation, which had changed from the beginning into something that did not need a different word because it was exactly what it was. Two people on a boat that was the right sides, in a harbor that was both sides of the border, in the winter that was the same as every winter, and not the same at all. "The second cup," Sanders said quietly. "Yes," Drev said. "It was the beginning," he said. "Yes," she said. "I think it was." Outside, the harbor lights moved on the water. The boat held them both, patient and certain, the way things were when they had found their purpose.